All right, for today's discussion, I am going to be talking about a perennial question that's always been brought up with discussions with fellow toy collectors, at least out here in Manila, and that is whether to keep a toy mint in box or just go ahead and open it up and play with the toy altogether. Now, for this discussion, we will be using references only for Hasbro made products, maybe including Takaratomi, but mostly Hasbro products, particularly Transformers, the Marvel Legends, and the Star Wars Black Series. So we don't go all over the place and talk about Hot Wheels and all that. And let's stick to those three categories, since in my circle of friends, those are the three main toy lines that they collect, well, at least out here in Manila. So, uh, the question is, should you open a toy or not? On the side of opening toys, the answer is quite basic and simple. It's a toy. They're meant to be played with. You don't you buy a toy because for in essence or what it is a plaything, and you just go rah, you just fight with them, transform, and you do all of that, and then you just keep them and put them back in your shelf and whatever, and display them, put them in poses and all that. That's essentially the basic idea of a toy. If it is viewed under other circumstances as whether it's a collectible toy, a high-end valuable toy, do you still open it or not? In all its essence, a toy is a toy. And whether it's a collector piece or not, there has to be some form of appreciation. And the most basic form of appreciation is really by opening it up. Now, I'll talk about more reasons for opening up, where to convince somebody who's a mint in box collector to open up something. I'll talk about that later at the end of the video. But suffice to say, the main reason for the toy is to open it up. Okay? Now, having said that, why do people go through great lengths to keep the toy mint in box? It's not like it's a comic book where you have to keep it together, or it's like a fine piece of art or jewelry which you have to keep. It's a toy. But some people still go to great lengths to keep it mint and pristine in sealed box. So let's talk about the main reasons. I think there are four main reasons I can think of why people keep things mint in box. Now, the first reason I can think of is rarity. Now, I'm not talking about that My Little Pony character, but rather a figure is deemed rare or very difficult to come by. And the simple reasons for that being so is, one, it is a convention exclusive. Most convention exclusives have limited release, and especially if they sell out during the convention, becomes very, very difficult to come by. Now, they don't necessarily mean that the toy is absolutely fantastic, given that it is a convention exclusive, but being that it has a limited run or limited amount of production units, makes collectors feel that you shouldn't open it up because it has more value if you keep it mint in a box. The other reason I can think of is for being rare or making a figure in limited quantities is if it is a store exclusive. And most store exclusives, they don't really get released all throughout all stores. For instance, Toys R Us exclusive. Before the store closed down, it was an exclusive only to particular Toys R Us stores. And for a lot of territories where Toys R Us is still present, like in Asia, Australia, and even in Canada, a Toys R Us exclusive item remains a Toys R Us exclusive item, despite the parent company folding. So it becomes very difficult to come by and also very, very pricey. Another reason for making it quite rare is if it was never released. There are some particular items that Hasbro decided not to release. They canceled it. They released it in limited quantities in certain territories and decided not to go full scale on releasing it for reasons only known only to them. And maybe there was an issue with the product, or they had a better version of the product in mind, or the timing was off. For whatever reason, it did not see the light of day in a lot of territories or countries, and therefore making it very, very limited. And this limited sort of sense of a toy gives it a little bit of artificial value, meaning that the toy probably doesn't cost a lot, but because it is in limited production, not a lot of people have it, most collectors want to keep it as mint and pristine as possible from its original production, just to keep its intrinsic value high, so to speak. Second reason why people would want to keep things mint is difficulty of acquisition. Now, an item like, for instance, the Professor Xavier from the Uncanny X-Men Marvel Legends line may not be as a rare figure as most people believe. It doesn't have a limited production number or of units. It's actually mass produced, but the problem is the way it's been distributed in stores in case assortments is that there's only one per case of 3 together with Deadpool, and a lot of collectors seem to want it. So the high demand and limited supply, not so much limited production, but the limited assortment makes the figure increasingly difficult to acquire or to obtain unless you do it through secondary sources. Another figure that was extremely, very, very difficult to obtain was the white-suited Storm Marvel Legends figure in the retro card packaging. It's not so much, again, that it was made in limited quantities. It's made in a lot of quantities. The only problem is it came in an assortment of 6 figures, with it coming as 1 per case with 5 different other characters in a box of 6 figures, and thereby, limiting the chances of acquiring this figure on retail, since most retailers would opt to buy one whole case of assorted figures. And out of all the 6 figures, this figure had a particularly very high demand amongst all the rest of the figures, making it very, very difficult to find, despite being mass produced and not produced in limited quantities. Other figures that I thought were increasingly difficult to obtain or acquire, at least here in Manila, were this Optimus Prime figure and Marvel's Rescue. And it's again, the reasons being is the assortment that came with it. It came 1 per box. It came 1 together with another Voyager class figure, and Rescue came with a bunch of 7 other characters to build the Professor Hulk, and the demand was very high. They're mass-produced figures, but they were difficult to find simply because a lot of the collectors wanted them, and they were bought right off the shelf. And in some cases, a lot of stores I've been to, the items never made it to the shelf, and collectors were just getting them out of the pallet, or once the stocks were arriving, they were getting them straight from the shipment box, and which was crazy. Because of the demand, it doesn't necessarily mean it is a rare figure, but because of the demand and the limited assortment that it has for a particular case or wave makes it extremely rare and very difficult to come by. And I wouldn't blame others for maybe searching 7 or 8 different stores only to have found only one piece left and treasuring that moment, that whole experience of really hunting a figure down. It does take a toll on you, and you think you don't want to open something that you've worked so hard for and just probably ruin it. The whole essence of ruining a toy because you're taking it out of its original production state or its pristine condition, it really plays a part when you've had difficulty securing the particular product. Now, a third reason why I can think of why collectors would want to keep something mint in box is the high acquisition cost. Now, it may not be very difficult to find the product, but because it had a limited release or for whatever reason, it's no longer available on mass retail, and the only way to get it is through hobby shops or secondary sellers or online sellers, and they already go for a premium. Out here in Manila, these Star Wars figures already go at a ridiculous amount of money. Whether you buy them, you think it's legit, whether you think it's justifiable to pay such a thing, you cannot take away the fact that, at least here in Manila, a lot of these scalpers, a lot of these online stores or hobby shops are really, really looking into the interests of collectors by pricing these particular figures at a very high price. Now, if you've saved up a lot of money and you've spent a fortune just trying to acquire one, I wouldn't blame you for taking a step back and maybe thinking that you shouldn't open it because you paid so much money for it. That's happened to me several times in the past, and I kind of regret not opening figures, but we'll talk about that later. But given that it is, like for instance, this Qui-Gon Jinn figure, out here hobby shops are selling it for about $70-$80 a piece. I've seen this Boba Fett go for $50, and these Darth Vader figures go for $30 to $50. So It's ridiculous, I know, and it shouldn't be the case, but that is what's happening in the world. A lot of figures are overpriced, and some collectors are desperate. And they go out, they spend a lot of money, and I think it's equivalent to hunting figures down for so long, where you spend so much, when you worked for a particular figure and you get it. I can't really blame people for not wanting to open up a particular figure. And the last reason I can think of why a collector might not want to open up a particular toy is it's just too nice to open up. And I know it's gonna sound corny and ridiculous for many of you, but I personally have experienced that when you buy a toy, whether you saw it on the shelf easily or you took forever for you to find it, whether for whatever reason you bought it online, once you open it out of the shipping box or once you see it, you think it's so nice. You don't want to ruin the way it's been tied up or twist tied and packaged and neatly presented, that you feel if you open it up and you try and put it back in the box, it's not going to look as nice. You don't want to erase that high that you got once looking at it and then buying it and seeing how awesome your purchase was. And it happens with a lot of collectors. I don't know, let me know in the comment section if it's happened to you, but a figure that seems to look so nice to open up, even if it's not a rare or difficult figure to come by, collectors shy away from opening it. And that's happened to me several times, particularly with that Storm figure, with the 3.75-inch Marvel Universe figures, some 3.75-inch Star Wars figures. It's happened to me with a lot of Takaratomi Transformers Henkei Generations figures, and it's happened to me a lot. So I don't discount it as a valid reason. Something so nice. I mean, Hasbro's been doing a wonderful job with their products of late. They've been doing this for almost 10 years, more than 10 years now. And it seems that they're getting something right. And when you look at their products now on display, and you go to Comic-Con, you go to Toy Fair, you see them on display, it's just so pretty that when you feel once you get it, you don't have the heart to open it. It may seem corny and absurd to a lot of you, but for a lot of collectors, it afflicts them. And seeing that they feel the value of the figure goes away once you've opened it. To a certain point that a lot of collectors actually buy doubles, triples even, just so they can open up one and still have that great feeling inside of them that they still have one mint in box, something of greater value than the one they've opened up. So yeah, it's a reality, but we have to address these issues to find out really what's going on in the collector's mind. So after all that's been said and done, what's my take on this issue? I have to admit I've been in a point in my collecting life that I did both. I kept things mint in box or mint on card. I've opened up things. I've done both. And to the point that I actually bought doubles and triples so that I could open up the toys I wanted and then still have some mint in box. Eventually I sold most of my collection. About 90% of my collection is all gone. And quite frankly, my biggest regret is not really opening up a particular figure which I felt should have been kept mint in box. My biggest regret was really not opening up a particular figure. The Marvel Universe 3.75-inch Archangel. I never did a review of that. I never got a chance to play with that particular figure. I sold off both my figures. It was a decent price, but I sold it off not being able to play with that figure, not knowing how the figure was. I had actually the Takaratomi versions of Transformers Prime Breakdown and Silas Breakdown. They were both mint in box. I sold them off not opening up those toys, never knowing how they transformed. I know how they transformed supposedly when I've seen video reviews of them, but personally, I didn't know how they transformed. So it kind of sucks not knowing, but I had my reasons for not opening them up, and one of them was I figured I was going to sell them, and I didn't want to lose value. And again, like the reasons I mentioned, it was very difficult to acquire those figures. So that's probably my biggest regret, not knowing what the figure, how good the figure was. In fact, I did have a 40th anniversary Voltus 5 Soul of Chogokin figure from Bandai. I bought it, kept it in my cabinet for months, not opening it up, then selling it. It sucks. because I figured if I'd open it up, the value would go down. I wouldn't get the money I wanted from it. And it makes you ask the question, why'd you even buy it in the first place? And, that's probably for another discussion. But the short answer for that is sometimes you just want to feel that you've actually owned something. And once you've owned it, it feels great. And afterwards, you don't know what to do with it. But again, like I said, that's another episode. That's probably another discussion we'll have to get into. But suffice to say, I do have regrets not opening figures up. And after that happened, I made sure that if I really wanted a figure, I'd want to open it up. Now, my other point being is, sometimes it's nice to open up figures for practical reasons. The one thing is, you want to know if your product is defective. If you've seen my videos, you know I have a history of Hasbro products having quality control issues and defects and all that. And if you keep things mint forever, you're not going to know whether something is defective or not. And you're probably thinking, the one I got is probably not defective, probably a good one. You're probably right, but sometimes you can't be too sure. And not knowing that, makes you think that have you been keeping a defective product all these years? Okay? My thing is, if you're not planning on selling your entire collection or most of your collection in the near future, then I don't think there's harm in opening up your toys. If you're planning on selling them and investing in them, sure. You want to keep them mint. You have your G1 Transformers. You have the vintage collection Star Wars. They look really pretty not opened up. But if you're not really planning on selling them anytime soon, my suggestion is you try and enjoy the toy. It's kind of an insult to the designers and engineers who really put a lot of time and effort designing and building the toy, and you're just going to keep it in box. It's quite true, especially for Transformers figures. And I learned the hard way. The transformation of a lot of the figures are really works of art. And for you not to be able to appreciate them to the point that you'll have to sell the figure not knowing or not appreciating the design that went into it, it kind of sucks. Or it's kind of an injustice to those who really put a lot of time and effort in building the toy. Okay, so what am I trying to say? You may or may not have your own reasons, kooky reasons for opening up a toy or not opening up a toy. At the end of the day, it all boils down to your preference. Whatever will make you sleep soundly at night. If ripping open toys causes a traumatic incident in your life, like, I don't know, you can't bear opening up a Rogue figure which you purchased for $60 off of eBay and you just want to keep it mint, sure, why not? Maybe you need more time to come to terms with it. Sure, it's all right. If it makes you happy just looking at toys in packaging and you're not really the type who wants to play with toys, you're just more of you just want to look at the toy. I know I have a buddy on YouTube. Her name's PJ. She is Miss Toy Diva. I'm sure you've seen some of her videos. She keeps a lot of her toys, 99% of her toys, mint in box. There's nothing wrong in that. There's no shame in that. But you got to ask yourself, with all these toys you've had, maybe, it's time you try to enjoy a little and see if the toy is really as valuable as you think it is. Because chances are, these are mass retail toys. Even the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, the WonderCon exclusive, Toy Store exclusives, they're still mass retail. And the way Hasbro keeps producing their toys, for instance, in the Marvel Legends, you have a Jean Grey from the Rocket Raccoon wave, which is now worthless because there's a new Jean Grey. I mean, toys keep updating. They're not the most expensive of products. They keep coming up with better versions, rendering a lot of the previously released toys, like especially in Transformers, with my discussion on scale with the Generations toys, a lot of the toys have already become obsolete for most collectors because there's a better version. So you got to ask yourself, does opening the toy really hurt the value when, in fact, there isn't as much intrinsic value in that particular toy? Finally, I wanted to say, is there a middle ground to all this? Because I know a lot of collectors don't want to open up their toys because they don't like cleaning them up. They don't like putting them away. They just want to keep them all sorted out and organized. Some feel that the value is going to be ruined if you display the figure. So is there a middle ground to this? Most of Hasbro's packaging allow you to put the product back in the box. And that's what I've been trying to do now. The boxes for these figures, well, except for him, these two figures are already thrown away, so there's no way of putting it back. This one I keep using him in reviews, so I don't put him back in the box. But this one, I was able to put him back in the box. And what it did for me was, when I first started collecting the vintage collection figures, even in the 6-inch line, I didn't want to open them up. They sort of had this mystic aura about them. But if you know you can put things back in the box, it demystifies a particular product. And then once you had it and you open it up and you put it back in the packaging, you begin to think about it like, why did I waste so much energy being neurotic about not being able to pick up this figure or missing out on this figure and all that? It puts a little bit of perspective to a particular toy. And you know, much about life is all about perspective. You think something is very clearly valuable or make a significant impact in your life right now, but years from now or months from now, when you look back on it, you really think that it would seem insignificant. It does seem insignificant right now, your worries and fears of not getting the figure, because once you've opened it up, the mystic or the mystified look or value that you've seemed to have put on the figure just suddenly disappears. So, with that being said, I'm not trying to impose anything on anyone. I'm trying to just put the sides of both schools of thought on toy collecting out there, and you got to decide on your own what makes you happy. The whole idea is to love what you're doing. If you're just going to get stressed out about a particular hobby, then I guess that hobby is pretty useless. The hobby is here to make you relax, make you enjoy, relive your childhood, and maybe, hopefully, you can pass on something like this to future generations. Maybe it's your children, your kids, younger brothers, sisters. If you don't have a family yet, maybe you can pass it on to younger kids like your cousins or friends or kids of your friends. You know, I mean, there is something good about toy collecting. That's why still a lot of people do it. I mean, it's not as absurd as a lot of people seem to think. There is some value to it. And the whole essence of the toy collecting is to have a hobby that reminds you of your childhood, that keeps you young, and makes you a better person. If you don't get that at all by being so neurotic about whether to keep things mint on card, mint on box, or whether to open it up, sell it, buy it, pass on it, then you probably missed the mark or missed the point of having a hobby. So I'm not trying to bash anybody. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. Just think about what you're really doing and think about what's important, what makes you happy, and you go for it. So with that, I hope everybody has a great time collecting. Happy hunting. It's a great time to hunt, or happy pre-ordering, or finding stuff on Facebook groups or on eBay. Have fun. This is a great hobby. I'm very proud to be one of those in the toy collecting hobby I can share with a lot of my friends. So I hope you've enjoyed this little video review. If you did, please let me know in the comment section below. It's not entirely a review, it's more of a discussion. Nevertheless, I appreciate all your comments. I appreciate all your views on this topic. Please let me know in the comment section below and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of my latest video reviews. Before I go, I'd like to make a big shout out to my collecting buddies at Iacon City, Philippines. Christian, Jay, Nico, and Joshua. These are my buddies who I chat with on Facebook every single day, talk about toys and everything under the sun. So hope you guys have a great time hunting down your toys. I know it's been pretty slow here in Manila, not getting the latest releases because of all the coronavirus going around, and you know, business has been slow, shipments have been delayed and all that, but nevertheless, we still enjoy the hobby, and I hope you do too. So with that, I'd like to all wish you great hunting, great collecting, and thanks for watching.